Right, starting on another project on the old 300 TDI. MOT is due soon and we have a slight issue with the rear cross member. There's a hole there, there's a hole here. This isn't attached to anything, it's just absolute paper now. So it's going to have a whole new cross member. So first things first, we want to remove the tow hitch. Those 3 bolts there, that is everything that would physically undo on this one, so the rest of it is going to have to be cut off. So we'll do that when the cross member is off. Next job is to remove the wiring loom from the chassis itself. There's 3 plugs at the front, and then there's a ground on the gearbox which you need to remove each, and then she goes up through that hole there, feeds right to the back, and the 3 plugs are more accessible from underneath to undo, but they are down the side just there, which you can't actually see. They're in behind the air filter. So undo those, pull them through. The grommets are tighter than hell, so you will have a nice safety session at those. Put it back through, I pull a rope through, and then I wrap it in silver foil to stop burning through the rope with the welder and the plasma cutter. So the next job is to measure the length of the new cross member and cut the old one off, and then undo each of these bolts. Right, I don't know where I got to on the last video clip because it was a while ago. Things went tits up and I had to put this project aside again. So I'm now about to restart the chassis change on this Land Rover. I've undone as many bolts as I can holding the hitch on. Problem is most of them have literally just rusted apart, so they're going to have to be cut. So the easiest thing to me to do is take the chassis off with it and then cut what needs to be cut. So what I'm now going to do is I'm going to go and measure the new chassis, and then we shall measure that to this one, and that will tell us where we need to cut on this one. So this here is the new chassis. This was accessible when I put it here, and I was just doing the job, so it looks like we need to move a few bits and pieces to be able to carry on again. Right, so this is the new chassis. As you can see, this one's got the extended legs on it and it's got cuts in. So what will happen is this here section will slot over the old chassis, and then all you have to do is weld down the sides and the fronts to secure it on there. So we need to measure from here to this point just here to get the correct measurement. If you cut to here, you're going to have just nothing to weld to. So it's going to be roughly 15 inches back, going level from the face of the cross member. So I'll put the camera down and make sure I do have measured this correctly, and then we'll transfer it back across to the other one. Now on second thoughts, it's better to measure from the bottom of this end of chassis, because obviously with it being in place on the other Land Rover, you cannot measure from the top because the body sits close to it. So remeasuring from the bottom, you can see we're going to want to make a cut about 16.5 inches, which is about 420mm for those of you that like to use the other measurements. Right, so now we're underneath the Land Rover. We need to measure back the same distance, 16.5 inches, which is about there. And I'm going to have to do this with the camera put down, and then I shall get a marker pen, mark all the way around it, grab the plasma cutter and cut the living shit out of it. Not sure if you'll see anything, but here goes. Land Rover. Can't find the ground. Right, so what I've done now is I've cleaned up the surfaces of where I'm going to be welding. Next job is to clean up the new cross member. I've got a couple little sections I need cutting out on the other side for the body mounts. So because it's just a square edge, so it's going to need a little bit of that needs cutting out, which I know from previous experience. So all I'll do is measure from the end of the body up to the mount, and then how far down it is on the chassis, and cut that section out, give it a clean up, slot it over, put a couple of bolts in here just to hold it in place, and then time to give her a weld. I've got a little bit more cleaning up to do just to get a good weld on there. I'm not worried about these edges here because they're just going to be inside the new piece. So I mean, if you want to be really anal, you could square them off with a grinder, but I'm not in that sort of anal sort of mood, and it doesn't actually make the slightest bit of difference. So that's the next job. Right, as you can see now, I've just cleaned up all the edges, cut the little section out here for the body mount. So now it's time to lift her on. This bar here in the middle, this will need to be knocked out because it gets in the way of the exhaust. It's just a transit bar to stop it from being bent. So now it's time to, what I'll do is I'll bolt her on the back with a couple of bolts, slot her on, and she'll be ready to get a weld. Right, as you can see, I've got it all lined up now. Just a bit of persuasion with a jack, managed to push it into place and slightly alter the mounts. So she's now ready for some penetration with a welder, which looks like Darren's going in for. Right, so she's welded up. So next job is to chuck some paint on it, and then so it doesn't rust overnight, and stop the water getting to it. There we go, coat of red oxide just to help it, and once that's dry I'll spray it black, and that's us done. Well, apart from the bump stop that needs doing. Right, I've got everything all painted up now. Next job is to push the wiring back up through the chassis. I did have a draw wire in there, but what I forgot to do was I forgot to move it back. I wrapped the draw wire in tin foil to stop it being burnt through, but I forgot in my hastiness to pull the tin foil back into where I was cutting, and I went straight through the draw wire with the plasma cutter. So I now need to feed a new draw wire through. I've got some lighting cable which I'll draw through and then tape on the wires and then pull it back. Right, the chassis is on now. Exhaust has all been mounted and patched for the MOT. All she needs to do now is receive a tow hitch, and then she's back in full commission. So she's now ready for MOT, and